This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. Okay, so yesterday evening I did a quick Skype lesson with a guy that I've spoken to before, Tom, if you're watching, alright? And I said that I would probably do a video on this because I thought it was maybe important. Now, basically Tom asked me, like, when you're playing, sometimes it sounds like you're going to an unexpected place, but it also sounds like it's the right place. And it also sounds like you're not playing scales. So I kind of wanted to do a little bit of a video, or not just playing scales. Now, your opinion on this may totally differ. You may hate my playing, in which case I'm sorry, but this is a video just in case you wanted to hear my perspective on some of this stuff. So I guess let's just get into it. If you like this sort of lesson type video, you could consider leaving a comment or doing whatever helps the algorithm. Equally, Patreon is the place to get sort of tabs and all this sort of stuff. I've actually got a full-length tab just going up now. So if you're into sort of some of my melodic sentiments or whatever, then that's kind of a good resource for that. The £5 a month for the full transcriptions, which I put up monthly. Yeah, backing tracks and all that stuff you can get for the entry-level price if you want that. So, kind of talking about some ideas. So where does the unpredictable stuff come from that doesn't sound like scales? So the thing is that we are, of course, all playing scales. The thing that people worry about is that you're doing this sort of thing. So if you took like a loop, so we're going from G, E minor. The most scalic thing you can do, in my opinion, is play 3-note per string scales. And that's one of those things that people do. Or you might see you know, these sorts of things which sound maybe a little bit more like you're just playing up and down. Into the thing. So one thing that I did say to Tom early on was, if you're playing a scale, playing a line as well, you only have to change one little aspect for it to suddenly sound a little bit less predictable. So say you're going, what about instead? I'm only changing like one aspect and suddenly it sounds a little bit less like I'm just going straight up and down a scale. So that's one really key thing here. Now another thing that people talk about a lot is like targeting chord tones, as if this is going to get you suddenly somewhere like really melodic playing. So for instance, I could target the third of each of these notes. And in some ways there is something to this, but I also think it can sound quite clunky. This is the third of E minor. This is the third of C. This is the third of G. If we just do the roots, this might even sound more clunky. Yeah, so that's not got necessarily a particularly great sound to me. I focus less on, for this sort of progression, which is like super diatonic, I focus more on just notes that sound like they got somewhere to go. And for me, this is oftentimes the ninth. It's got a really open sound. and something that sounds like it's got somewhere to go versus that's quite resolved, or that's quite resolved. Whereas the fifth I'm also here not too worried about like the chords passing underneath. I'm aware of them, but this is kind of the thing with melody in a lot of ways, is that actually a melody can sound good over a lot of different chords, and that's kind of like the thing about reharmonization and all that sort of stuff. So I wouldn't spend as much focus if you're trying to play over like these super diatonic things. If you're trying to sound melodic, targeting the chord tones exclusively, I think doesn't necessarily get you necessarily that close to sound like a sax player. I'd think about more vocally, you know, things like this is a really important thing that I was saying to Tom. When you're practicing, practice being able to repeat what you've just done. And I've talked about this before. We're talking here maybe about like AABA structure. And this is like a secret to sounding like you meant to play what you played. Gives everything a bit more intent and makes everything sound maybe a little bit more planned, and maybe even like you composed a solo, even though it might be totally new. So if I listen to the first phrase that I play, can I do that again? So right, let's take that. So A, we're going to restate that. Now B, we're going to go right. You hit here, so I'm stating the melody. I'm going to restate it. Maybe a variation. Restate again. And I'm making it sound like these things that I'm doing, I maybe meant to do. Do you know what I mean? Let's try something different. And again. You know, these things are not planned. I just have an idea about what these melodies would sound like as I play them, and then I'm repeating the same thing. Now, even if you don't get it completely right, if you're aiming for this, it kind of gives then the impression, even if you don't fully replicate what you did first time, that you're intentionally developing the idea. So for me, I'm super parent scale focused. Like I'm thinking G major for all of this. I also have like a bit of a weird thing where I can hear chords as they're passing, like, quite clearly. This has been something that I could do as a kid, I think, from learning a lot of songs. So there is like some instinct to this that I can't really impart everything, if you know what I mean, but it's just some ideas that I'm kind of giving you here. So that one other thing that he talked about was like making spread triads sound more obvious. Now, obvious spread triad use in this case might be like this. But what I suggested was, this will work over all of the chords, just the G. So it works nicely over that, over your G, over your 6, over the... So if I like the sound, don't get hung up on always having to follow the chord movement. Like a G triad works over an E minor and works over a C. Or like a D triad would work quite nicely over all of these chords as well. So that gives you a major 7 sound. It's an inversion. Do you know what I mean? I'm spending less time thinking about exactly what I'm playing over it and kind of just going for it. Another thing he talked about was like, how do you find a way for the melody to continue if you're sliding between boxes? And my point really was that just spend a bit more time in the box before kind of getting back out of there. Like necessarily, there might be some positions, like you might have a mental block once you get to the top of your pentatonic. Well, then just start descending again. That's a nice C there. And another thing is to reach out of the box and come back down, which has a really nice sound. Just a few ways there. So when the improvisation is happening and it's happening well, you're kind of trying to put together sort of things that you've found solutions for, like, and when it's really seamless, it's just that the gaps are not as obvious. But piecing together some of these ideas, like targeting that the second note of the scale, if I'm playing in G major, if I'm looking for something that sounds like it's got somewhere else to go, I might target the 5th, I might target the 9, just of the parent key, because those are notes that are not super prescriptive. Like, they're not saying we're finished here, they're saying we've still got what places to go. then the kind of last thing that I was going to say around this, also you could consider like some interval practice. And sprinkle these in, like sixths are really strong. Practicing the same line, the same kind of concept, but trying different endings. And if you can try and sing some of this stuff at the same time, I think it's a really good idea. And then, yeah, the one last piece of advice that I kind of had on this was, say you had 7 minutes to practice improvising. Instead of just noodling for 7 minutes, why don't you break it up into 7 1-minute chunks? And you go, right, well, this is... Then you're kind of starting how to start your solo, which I think is what really benefits this kind of stuff, where it's like, okay, I'm going to take this start of a solo and that is where I'm going to try and be melodic. So if we just do that instead of, you know, literally, you know, an hour later finding, oh, I've just whatever spent all of this time improvising but there was no real structure to it. Well, just take smaller chunks of time and you're still getting the same sort of noodling vibe, but you're being a bit more conscious, a bit more mindful about what you're practicing. There's a motif. Okay, let's start again now. Something different. I think some simple, not theory-based ways that you can try and get a little bit more out of your own playing. What underlies all of what I was doing really there is kind of the G major scale. And those concepts in there are fairly simple in that I'm saying you don't necessarily, when it's a diatonic chord progression like this, need to worry all the time about targeting specific notes of every chord all the time. Just keep it a bit more instinct based if this kind of works for you. and keeping it a bit more simple and having a more structured kind of intent at the start of a solo where you're going, right, I'm going to state a melody, whatever that happens to be. Can I sing it? Yes, I can. Can I repeat it? Okay, let's try. Okay, well, what if I was going to build upon that? Like, keeping that more composing type approach to your solos can, I think, help you to avoid sounding just like you're running up and down scales all the time, which of course at some point during your solo you might build towards, but having this goal at the start of your thing might be able to get you kind of further to what you're trying to sound like, maybe. And equally, like, if a melodic idea sounds good over one chord, there's a good chance that it will sound good over the other chords as well. That's kind of one of the things about melody, is that oftentimes a melody in and of itself just works, and then you'll find that that can work in different contexts. So experiment with that as well. It's kind of my advice. I hope that helps to solidify some of what I was saying, Tom. And also this might help one or two of you other guys that are maybe interested in this sort of thing and are wondering, like, what are you thinking of when you do this stuff? If you've ever wondered that, there's not actually as much thinking as you probably think going on. Like, it's a lot of instinct and a lot of time spent running scales, but when I'm actually playing over this normal stuff that might be like more country popish or folk, or, you know, just basic chord progressions, it kind of all goes out the window. I'm just kind of listening and trying to be musical, I guess. I hope that sort of helps in some way. I'll catch you in another video soon. As I say, Patreon is the place to get my backing tracks and also full-length transcriptions of a bunch of solos. If you're looking for like places to check out some of this stuff, then Patreon if you want. Cheers for stopping by.